flip I was doing. I was trying to be ski, I guess. Freaking no, I hate this. This is stupid. Hello, everybody. How's it doing? How's it going? Ignore that part. I was trying something different, I guess. I don't know what the flip I'm doing. Just behaving like an idiot at the doorway. But today we got another long one. I wouldn't say it's as long as Buckskin per se. It's got 7 parts and they all seem relatively short and compact. But anyway, this the story we're reading today is called "It's Under the Drawbridge." It's under the boardwalk. There's something under the boardwalk, and this is by Matt Grimbridge. I'm not sure if they've written other stories. I haven't looked yet, but I will leave a link in the description below so you can read this story and check out their Reddit page. Good Lord. I'm gonna read this story, and then me and my brother are going to dive onto Cyberstam. We're gonna get rid of these clankers, dude. I've been playing a lot of Helldivers. We're gonna kick the automatons out of the room. Okay. And without further ado, we're gonna get right into There's Something Under the Boardwalk. I'm kind of excited. I have no idea what to expect. I haven't read this before, so let's get going. If you're reading this, it's because I have no other choice. Nobody will listen to me, not even the police. It's only a matter of time before they can come and get me. And when they do, this is the only evidence of the truth. There's something under the boardwalk in Paradise Point, and it's hungry. October is always a terribly slow month. We're barely open, but the owners want to squeeze every penny they can before this town is completely empty. Even on the Friday night, it's already a ghost town. That's where this all began. A cold, deafeningly quiet night at the record shop I spend my days working in. Specters, Records, and Rarities. A store that really wasn't dead in the water until vinyl made a huge comeback. We also sold shirts that you might find a middle schooler wearing, even though they wouldn't be able to name a single song off the album they were doning. It really was a place frozen in time. The smell of dust and the decay of better days always filled the room. Best way to pass the time on a night like this would be to find a forgotten record to play. That was my favorite game, finding an album I'd never heard of and giving it a chance to win me over. After all, if I'm not going to play them, who will? Tonight's choice, Secret Treaties by Blue Oyster Cult. Of course I knew Don't Fear the Reaper. Who doesn't? I never sat down and listened to their albums, even though their logo and album artwork always intrigued me. I retired the familiar sounds of ELO off the turntable and introduced it to something new. Seeing the album made me think of my dad. I remember him telling me about seeing them live with Uriah Heep at the old Spectrum in the 70s. I bet he still had the ticket stub too. God, he loved the place. I even remember seeing him shed a tear the day they tore it down. The opening chords of Career of Evil blared out of my store speakers as I dropped the needle. Had my mind not been elsewhere, I wouldn't have settled it myself into spilling my coffee. The previously white album cover and sleeve are now browned and tainted. Who would want it now? Looks like it was coming home with me. After all, a song titled Harvester of Eyes certainly had a place in my collection. The owner wouldn't care anyway. He had jokingly threatened to set the store ablaze for insurance money. Had the shop not been attached to others of this boardwalk, I wouldn't have put it past him. The opening track sold me, and given the state of business, I decided it was time to close up shop. The only thing louder than BOC was ticking clock that sat above the old Plan 9 from Outer Space poster. Just as the second track reached its finale, I lifted a needle. I retrieved one of our spare plastic sleeves to prevent any more damage and stowed it away in my backpack. Took a walk outside to see if there were any stragglers roaming the boards. All I could see was a long and winding road of half-closed shops and stiffened carnival rides, lit only by amber sky of an autumn evening. Soon it would be dark, and the boardwalk would belong to the night and all that inhabited it. The garage doors of the shop slammed shut with a finality that reminded me of the months to come. Sound echoed around me, only to be consumed by the wind. It wasn't nearly as brutal as the gusty wind months, but it swirled with the open space as if it were dancing with the night. The padlock clicked as I scrambled in combination, and I turned to greet the darkness and painted over the beach. Summer was truly over now. The soundtrack of carnival rides, laughter, and stampeding feet was replaced with the moans of hardwood under my feet. Each step felt like I was disturbing somebody's grave. That was the reality of this place. For months out of the year, 4 months out of the year. It was so full of life that it's overwhelming. The rest of its time was spent as a graveyard that is hardly visited. Maybe that's why I never left. If I don't visit, who will? Speaking of visiting, this is the point of my trek home that I saw Bane. They called him that because he was a rather large man, built like a hulking supervillain. In reality, he was as soft as a teddy bear, but unfortunately homeless. Even from the distance I saw him, which was 2 blocks away, there was no mistaking him. Only ever saw him sparingly. He never stayed in the same place for long. Often slept under the boardwalk. Often thought he was self-conscious of his stature, and I didn't want to scare people. I could see that he must have been taking the same swirling twilight sky I'd seen earlier. Now he was merely entertaining the stars. Looking to my left, I saw the Vincent's Pizzeria was closing up shop. He must have had a better run of business than I did. I slinked over to the counter to see a solitary slice looking for a home in the display case. The girl working the counter had her back to me, and as I began to make an attempt for attention, she screamed. "Oh my god, you scared me!" she gasped. Chuckling, "Oh my god, you scared me!" she gasped. Chuckling nervously, I apologized. "I'm sorry, I just wanted to grab the slice before you closed up." Made an honest try at a friendly smile, and she laughed. Sure, $3. As she threw the slice in the oven to warm it up, she turned her attention back to me. "So, any plans tonight?" I thought about it, and I really didn't have any. I knew my ritual at this point: work and then visit Mix for a drink or two until I've had enough to put me to sleep. I was going to head over to Mix, maybe catch the game for a bit. She grinned. "I know Mix right around the corner, yeah? Maybe I'll stop by then. There isn't much else to do on a night like tonight." I handed her a $5 and signaled her to keep the change. "Maybe I'll see you there," I said half-heartedly, giving one last smile as I departed. She waved, and I focused my attention on the walk ahead. She seemed plenty nice. Might be nice to interact with someone. First, I had something I wanted to do. Bane was right where he was last I saw him. Except he was now gathering his things, I approached him with some haste. "Hey, bud. Haven't seen you in a while." When he turned to see it was me, a smile grew across his face. "Hey, Mac. Long time." In my patent awkward fashion, I continued. "It's been dead out there, huh?" Without looking up, he lamented. "Sure has. It's that time of year. Certainly not going to miss it." Puzzled, I pressed him. "What do you mean?" Once he finished packing his bag, he sighed and his baritone voice continued. "I need to get some help. I'm going to go to that place in Summerdale. Finally get myself clean." Sounds so absolute what he was saying. I couldn't have been happier. "That's great, man. I'd happy to give you a ride myself if I had a car." I chuckled. It really did make my night. Took another deep breath. "I just need to see her again." He revealed a small photo in his pocket, presenting it in his large hands. The picture showed a newborn baby girl in the hands of a man in front of me. I haven't really seen her since she was born. Oh, sorry, that's him. "I haven't really seen her since she was born. Once I lost my job and everything just started falling apart." He trailed off. Shook it off to say, "I'm just ready. Tonight's my last night. I have my bus ticket ready to go." First thing in the morning, I just thought I would take one last sunset and say goodbye to the others. Saved enough money to get me a one night at the Eagle Nest. Oh, here it is. Yep, there's the burp. I was hard-pressed to find words. I didn't know he had a daughter. It was a lot to take in, but above all, I was so thrilled to hear he was setting off to do. Remembering what he had in his hands, I spoke up. Vincent's was closing up, and I thought I could use a bite. Since this is going to be the last time I'll see you, I won't take no for an answer. We both smirked. He reached up for quickly cooling the slice off. "That's really nice of you, Mac. I appreciate it." Not sure what else to do, I shot my hand forward to see for a shake. I really think what you're doing is great. It's been nice knowing you." He reached his enormous paw to mine and shook it. "You too. I'd say I'd see you again, but I really hope it's not here." He chuckled as he swung his bag onto his back. I smiled back and he waved goodbye. As we made our separate ways, a question occurred to me. "Hey, what's your real name, by the way? Maybe I'll look you up someday to see how you're doing." Without turning fully around, he said, "It doesn't really matter." With that, he retreated into the night and left me to wonder what he meant by that. I was soon reaching the block where Mix resides. The pub was right off the boardwalk. The neon lights that illuminated nearby were shining across the face of the mighty King Kong ride. Thankfully, my work and home were all within a short walk with Oh my gosh, we're all within a short walk of one another. Mick served as the ever so convenient medium between the two. This was also where I picked up his shift in the off-season. He must have noticed the frequency with which I visited and decided to offer me a job. It was a solid gig. Mix was one of the few around places on the island. Locals gravitated toward it once the summer crowds dissipated. If I was going to spend my time there, I figured I might as well get paid. Just as I was rounding the corner to the off-ramp, something happened. A loose board that hugged the wall grated my sneaker and sent me tumbling down. All this tourism revenue and the damn boardwalk is still old enough for Medicare. Turned over to my side to see where my backpack had landed. It was adjacent to the culprit. I groaned as I reached over to grab it when something caught my eye. Along the wall, hiding just below the wood, I saw what looked like a wasp nest. It was peeking out of the dark at me, almost as if it was watching me. It appeared at the light at the public guiding me. This wasn't a wasp nest. It was a sticky, pale yellow. Its texture looked wet, almost as if it was a hot candle wax burning from a flame. Maybe the fall had disoriented me, but I couldn't swear I saw it moving, rising and falling ever so subtly, like it was breathing. I adjusted my eyes as I leaned in. It wasn't very big, maybe the size of a tennis ball. It was riddled with holes, craters that left very little room for much else. I couldn't help but glare at them. Then it happened. They blinked at me. Okay, before I start part 2, I want to say I do like the characters they're building up. It's a very interesting premise how everything's taking place on this old, like, carnival boardwalk thing. It's a really cool premise. I don't really have a lot to say, though. So, alright, let's get into part 2. I jumped back. I pushed myself off the loose board, propping myself up against the concrete. The wood must have knocked whatever it was off the wall. Turned my eyes back to the mass only to find it was gone, leaving only a trail of faint fluid in one direction, under the boardwalk. Then, only silence. The sound of my rapidly racing heart was all that was left. What the hell was that? Did I really blink at me? Hadn't to have been seeing things. I just had to. That was a dead nest. Why wasn't it all thin and papery? The more I thought of its texture, the more I started to feel nauseous. If there were ever a time I needed a drink, this was it. I began to walking in a daze, listlessly on autopilot. Only the buzzing sign above guided me to my destination, like a moth to a flame. Pushed the bar doors open to find an empty cavern. Only the sound of the reverberating jukebox rang around the building. Hello, it's me, Todd Rundgren. The ghosts around here had good taste. The dim lighting had the architectural bones of the building in a typical Paradise Point tradition. This was yet another aging wonder. On a quiet night like this one, you might hear the remnants of good times past. Sometimes it even felt like the seat next to mine was taken. Even if nobody was there, for now, it was just me and my echoing footsteps. I hadn't sat for more than what felt like a few seconds before Tommy asked for my drink, snapped out of it. What's that? Your drink, Mac. Would you like to... Okay. I don't know how to do this guy's voice. Okay. Your drink, Mac? Would you like a drink? He said, gesturing in a chugging motion. Just grab me a shot of the usual, please. With that, he made his way to the far-end cooler. Blackberry brandy, a local delicacy. Never had it before I moved down here, but it quickly became my drink of choice. If your local watering hole doesn't keep a bottle or two in the frostier cooler, don't bother. A warm shot of this might as well be a felony. Tommy poured me a heavy hand in the glass in front of me. It's on me, buddy. He poured another for himself and clinked our glasses. You alright, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. The nauseous rot in my stomach returned. The hum of the lights shoved above me seemed to glow louder and sync with my thudding heart. How would I even have begun to explain what I had just seen? Before I could formulate a lie, he had to greet me with a new bar patron. My eyes followed suit to find that it was a familiar voice. There she was, the girl I had just seen at Vincent's. You come here often? She said with a fox twang accent, pulling up the vacant seat next to me. I reckon, said coyly, channeling my inner John Wayne. Good lord. Looks like we have the place all to ourselves, she remarked with a grin. I'm sorry about the sirens in the background, if you can hear that. Tommy better not leave my register unattended. There must be a whole $50 in there, I quipped. She laughed. Perfect, just the right amount to start a new life with. She presented her mixed drink to me for a cheers, only for me to realize my shot was empty. Suddenly, as if telepathically summoned, Tommy was there pouring into my glass mid-air. Talk about a top-notch service. Here's to, I trailed off. Here's to another summer in the books, she declared. I nodded my head to follow through with my second dose of medicine. She then continued, so are you a local year-round? Shook my head, yes, and clarified, Haven't always been. This is going to be the second winter I stay down here. How about you? She then proceeded to explain that she was back in school. Father owned Vincent's, and she was only helping on weekends until they closed for the year. She was a nursing major, in the thick of her training to become it certified. I listened intently. She seemed like she had a plan. I discovered we were the same age, 23, yet on a completely different avenue in life. She was at least on a road. I haven't been on one for miles. Enough about me. What are you up to? Question I was dreading. I answered very plainly, I don't know. After a brief silence, I voluntarily laughed. I'm just trying to figure something out. It's been a very long couple of years. I think she could see the fatigue on my face. Do you want to talk about it? I shook it off. Not particularly. It'll pass. Just a matter of time. I know she must have gone home and changed. She was no longer in her generic East Coast Italian pizzeria shirt. She was wearing a faded Rolling Stone shirt under her plaid long sleeve. Saw my opening and quickly changed the subject. She is definitely coming on to this guy. Hey, I love this shirt. I work at Spectre's. Actually, we have one just like it. She looked down and declared, That's hilarious. That's where I stole this from. We both laughed. It wouldn't surprise me, I remarked. Staff there is terrible. Someone needs to be fired. Our laughter echoed in the empty bar, only now mixing the sound of different songs. 3 Eyes by the Guess Who. The Ghost Never Misses. Oh, there's another one. She continued, Stones are my dad's favorite band. Name me Angie after that song. I liked that. It fit her. My dad loved them too, I occurred. Took me to see them when I was a kid. She smiled. Sounds like a great dad to me. I averted my gaze and wanted to change the subject. Then it hit me. Maybe she'd like the album I took home. I began to reach for my bag only to find it was missing. Something. It was missing something. The record. My eyes went from into the distance, suddenly being brought back to reality. That was my night. Everything okay? She inquired. Yeah, I just took an album here home tonight, and I think I might have left it behind. Then the thought chilled me to the bone. Did it fall out of the bag when I fell on the boardwalk? It was a white album. I would have seen it, right? Unless... Did it slip between the cracks? My mind raced for a moment before she said, Looks like I'm not the only person on the island with a 5-finger discount at Spectre's. I snapped out of it and gave a half-hearted chuckle. I looked at my phone. A few missed calls, a few texts. I didn't care to answer. It was getting close to 11. I'd definitely stayed longer than my allotted time at Mix. Besides, I had a girl at home and that I didn't like to be kept waiting. Daisy, a German Shepherd. She was no doubt worried sick where I was. The thought of what I had seen earlier that night began storming upon what was a good mood. I quickly said, I have to get going. My dog is home waiting for me, and she could probably use a quick walk before bed. Angie smiled wide. I love dogs. Do you think I could meet her? There was a pause. I didn't know if she meant this very moment or the near future. Either option didn't feel good to me. It was a nice surprise to meet someone who could distract me from my mind this long. What's the endgame here? This girl was probably better off just leaving whatever this was between us right at the Mix. I'm sure you'll see her. I walk her a lot around here. If she's good, I'll grab a slice for her this weekend. That was the best I could do. It was better than run as fast as you can. Do you need me to walk you home? She responded. I'm meeting some of my friends at the point. I was going to call an Uber. It's the last time of the week I work here, so they wanted to celebrate. Tommy, beginning to close up for the night, spoke up. I can wait here with her. I'm still cleaning up. I'll see you tomorrow night. I thought I was going to do next on my mind and began to make my way to the exit. Just as I was opening the door, she shouted, You never told me your name! Without turning around or even thinking, I responded, It doesn't really matter. What the hell did I mean by that? Just as I opened the bar doors, I was greeted by a misty air. The air had taken a new quality. This one was thick. Given the frequently temperature fluctuations this time of the year, it was no surprise that a storm was on the way. Looked down the corridor of the street lights that resided on Atlantic Avenue. Blinking yellow lights, an off-season signature, and the only illuminating sight of this foggy night. There's a slight rumble in the sky. As I made my way, my footsteps on the sidewalk echoed into eternity, each step making me less sure of what I was doing. Made it to the foot of the slope, my shadows growing larger with each step. I peered out into the loose board I had become acquainted with. The fog had passed just long enough for me to see that there was nothing there, just bare, naked concrete. I felt like a child, frightfully staring down a dark hallway after hearing a bump in the night. Scanned the area, no sign of the album. It was around this time that I noticed it was a full moon with a storm approaching. The combination would definitely spell for a high tide. If the wrecker was down there, it would be gone by morning. Turned my phone flashlight on and was greeted with more impenetrable fog. By this point, I could feel the kiss of rain above me. The boom of the thunder alerted me to my decision. Took a step forwards into the mouth of the boardwalk. Searching the sandy floor, nothing. Turned my attention to the concrete wall that had been the spot. This had to be the spot. No sooner that I had turned my attention there, a creaking crawl of sound rang out. Was someone above me? I shot my phone upward and saw nothing but the brilliance of the full moon between the cracks. Took a deep breath and noticed something peeking through the sand to my left. In a shallow grave created by the wind and sand was a white square. I immediately grabbed it. Secret treaties, finally. And get the hell out of here. I inspected the LP for damage from the fall to find it was relatively unbothered, except for one thing. As I researched my coffee stain, I was met with surprise. The faint brown stain was overlapped by a new color. Black? There was a jet black streak smeared across the plastic sleeve. To my eyes, it was crusted and coarse, like concrete. Oh, I thought I had another burp, sorry. Oh, there it is. There was a jet black streak smeared across the plastic sleeve. To my eyes, it was crusted and coarse like concrete. Held it close to my flashlight, unable to decipher its meaning. Just then, another creak. I frantically shunned my light in both directions to find the origin. Nothing. Something did catch my eye. The wall. The clear fluid I noticed in my early encounter had created a slimy drip down the wall. It led to a burrowing path into the sand. It was as if something had crept in an effort to be undetected. The trail appeared to be thick and deliberate. Using my light, I traced the journey to the fluid to find it created a path to where I found the album. Led even further, took slight steps to discover more. I couldn't stop. My mind was screaming at me to turn back, but my inquisitive feet prevailed. I must have hypnotically walked in an entire 2 blocks, investigating when I stopped dead in my tracks. I spotted the edge of a sharp corner sticking out of the sand, and knelt down to investigate. It was a photo. I lifted it high and shook the sand. I knew this picture. It was the snapshot of a father with his newly born daughter in his arms. Pain? I stared at the photo for what felt like hours. In reality, it had only been a few minutes, but the storm had finally arrived. A crash of lightning exploded above me, and I was chased by thunder. I could see the tide was creeping even closer, so I had to keep moving. I secured the album and photo into my backpack and started to hazily make my way home. Mixed neon signs had been retired for the night. I kept to the awnings of the hotels that resided on my journey home to stay dry. It was to no avail. When it rains here, it pours. The streets were already beginning to flood, sweeping away whatever debris lay in its wake. I felt like I was the only man left on Earth, but that wasn't a foreign feeling. At this point, I just wanted to get home to Daisy. That was the only thing that could make sense to me right now. I rounded the corner to my street, turning my brisk walk into a jog to finish line. Greeting me at the window was the love of my life, pointed ears and alert. She stood up tall at the bay window of the house. I don't know who was more excited to see who. She immediately bombarded me with kisses and whined with excitement, like hearing that I was drenched from the storm. One perk of working at the record shop is that I'm allowed to close up temporarily to let her out and feed her throughout the shift. You'll thought I was gone for days, the way she reacted. Once I peeled out of the wet clothes and changed, I retreated to the living room, using a matchbook from Mix to light some candles in the event of a power outage. The only sound filling the house was the persistent thunder and the ever-wagging tongue of my Daisy. I sat on the couch with her and took a much-needed deep breath. Looked around the house. Everything was still and grounded. Say you can never go home again. I never fail to feel transported in time when I'm here. Nothing has changed in 15 years. Almost like waking up in a Polaroid every day. After all, Dad didn't like change, and any disturbing of this place would feel like a tarnishing. He even had a picture I drew when I was 7 on the fridge. It was me with a mighty sword, slaying a giant creature I conjured up from my imagination. I played far too much Zelda on my own good then. It never fails to get a smile out of me when I see it in the morning. I suppose there were worse places to live than in a memory. Sounds of this tomb was becoming ear-splitting, and my mind began to wander to places I wished not to visit. I resolved to finish something I'd started earlier in the evening. I placed a photo of Bane and his daughter on my kitchen table. The weather should be clear in the morning. I'd take Daisy for a walk to the Eagle Nest first thing, and hopefully return to him. I looked up at the bus schedule, and the first bus was due at 7:15. The album I acquired was next. Now in the bright light of the kitchen, the mysterious dark smear on the protective sleeve still persisted. Must have been a product of the moonlight in which I discovered it, but it's much bigger than I remembered. The color was different. The shade was much more vibrant. I know what you're thinking. How can a black be vibrant? I swear. It almost seemed to glow. The texture was almost also amiss. I could have sworn it was dried and solid. The glare of the kitchen light presented more ink-like substance. Staring at it was making me queasy, the same nauseating feeling I had looking at the imposter wasp nest. Every fiber of my being told me not to touch it. I quickly resolved it to put in the trash. I had plenty of sleeves at work. Just as I was tossing in the bin and closing it shut, I couldn't help but stare at the blood. For some reason, it felt like staring into an abyss, with a true nothingness. It seemed like the stain was peering back, looking right through me. It's too late for this, I thought. I needed a nightcap to put me out for good. I approached the fridge. Planted in the freezer was a bottle of Old Reliable nestled next door. There were a few assorted spirits that hadn't been touched since the previous owner was around. Cherry vodka. Maybe I'd change it up. I purchased some ice cubes and made my way to the living room with the record. Tucked into the corner was a vintage stereo cabinet, a family heirloom, a collection of records raised next door, and it contributed my newest addition. With that, I dropped the needle as the roar of the guitars ripped through the speakers. Sipped my drink and perused the collection of music. Some of these albums have been here 50 years, dating back to my grandmother. She was a young lady when the world first met Elvis, the king. That was the genesis of the hereditary love for music in my family. Slid an LP out of its crypt. The Flamingos had pulled this one out before. Just as I was inspecting it, I heard a faint bark. I peered down the dark hallway to see the shape of Daisy. Seated politely at a door, it was Dad's room. Leslie kept it closed. I walked down to meet her, petting the top of her head. I know, baby. I miss him too. I did something out of character and opened the door. Daisy, without missing a beat, found her way to the still-made bed. Sat down next to her and rubbed her belly. I still feel the bass from the record through the walls. I glanced over to see the closet door cracked open, almost as if it was done on purpose. Opened it to be immediately drawn to a shoebox on the floor. I unearthed it to find it was an archive of ticket stubs. The overwhelming majority were from one place, the Spectrum, Philadelphia, PA. A few included Kiss, December 22nd, 1977, Paul McCartney and Wings, May 14th, 1976, Pink Floyd, June 29th, 1977, and Blue Oyster Cult, August 14th, 1975. I spent the next hour sifting through them, only stopping once to flip the record over and refill my drink. The kitchen window was cracked open, and the wild winds of the storm violently blew some loose cookie utensils on the floor. As I closed it, I could still hear the creaking bones of this old house coming to life. Those noises were practically a lullaby for me at this point. I returned to the room, and just as I was getting tired to continue, I found the one thing that eluded me. The Rolling Stones, November 17th, 2006, Atlantic City. I was only 4 years old. Wow. I can vaguely remember bits of it. My main memory of the night was sitting in the shoulders for my majority of the night. Feeling larger than life, I recall trying to catch the lights from the stage with my hands as they danced the arena around me. Just as I was in the trenches of the memory, I suddenly skipped in the music. Just as the record was in the midst of the song, I'm most intrigued by Harvester of Eyes. The antique stereo began to falter. These older models tend to do this, creating an almost hypnotic trance with the music. Turning to the ticket stubs, I relieved the vinyl of its duties for the evening. Oh, sorry, there's another one. Shoot, I lost my place. Where'd it go? Okay, there I decided to give my grandmother the stage. The opening chords of I Only Have Eyes for You arrived, and I felt at ease. Wait a minute. I only have eyes. Was that the exact same song used in Feeder for the hoarder guy and his ex-wife? That's wild. There's no way that's it. That's awesome. The storm was still strong, lightning seemingly pulsating with the music. I turned the lights down, blew out the candles, and finished my drink. Summoned Daisy to the couch where we comforted each other. The ethereal harmonies of the flamingos lulled us both to sleep. Thankful for all we had, even if it was just each other. I was yanked from my slumber by an abrupt sound. My bloodshot eyes opened and I searched for my surroundings for the origin. The storm still raged on, but this wasn't thunder. The stereo was no longer playing, shrouded in darkness. The power was out. Reaching for my phone to check the time, I only found it was dead. A startling noise returned, only this time it was a series. I looked at the couch to see Daisy was gone. Did she need to go out? She had a vocabulary of expressions, and this wasn't one of them. She rang out again, desperately for attention. This wasn't a bark, this was a scream. I hurriedly traced it to find her on the border of the dining room and kitchen. She wasn't sat, she was crouched forward with a fur underneath of her standing up. I could only make her figure out with each flash of lightning, barking violently. The pulse skidded across the hardwood as she backed herself into me. She reached out desperately with her paw and whined into my hands, hiding herself behind my legs. My heart was thudding into my chest with confusion, calling out of my throat. I dared to slowly peer around the corner to see the origin of her fear. What I saw next, I can't properly explain. Creeping out of the lid of my trash can was an oozing substance, stringy and sticky like a vine wrapping around a dead tree, slowly sprawling across the floor like veiny webs conquering the land below it. The only identifiable property of it was the color. It was the same ink color I had seen on the protective sleeve, sprawling and humming with a noise I'd never heard before. Oh, that's kind of funny. I can't explain it. Proceeds to explain what it looks like. It's just funny. I'm not dogging on the author. It's just kind of funny. That's all. It sounded like a dissonance of tuned sour notes on broken piano. Droning with dread, it crept even further out of the can, making a direct route to me, rising in pitch like an angry hornet. Daisy's barkings were now transformed into yelps, resulting in her skidding to the living room. I was paralyzed. Almost as if by design of a predator, I did the only thing that made sense and ran to the living room to retrieve the matchbook. Daisy was huddled into a corner of the room, shaking like a leaf on a tree. I returned to the kitchen to find the substance had covered more tile. Grabbing the bottled cherry vodka on the counter, I doused the atrocity and lit the match. Still in a momentary state of shock, I could see the ground ick begin to rise in protest as the noise permeating from it was now at a fever pitch. It stood high and spread itself apart like a blossoming flower of tendons. A sonic scream began to form within its rambling with the thunder outside, nearly blowing the match out. I threw out the flame in desperation and watched as it combusted with the fury of hellfire. What followed was an unearthly screech that nearly made my ears bleed. I fell back into the dining room table and broke the chair under me. Daisy ran over my aid, sat behind me, where we both glared in horror at what we were seeing. She howled at the sound and covered her ears in protection. I gripped her tight, watching as the flames raged on and the cries dried out with the creature. A fire alarm rang out, so I rushed to the pantry and the garage to grab the extinguisher with Daisy in full pursuit. I sprinted to the kitchen to find a harrowing sight, a trail of ash and a coat of clear slime lit underneath my back door. Desperately squeezed through the cracks to escape, opened the door, astonished to find where it led. There was a storm drain in our backyard to help prevent flooding. The nightmare's trail led directly to it, leaving only one possibility of where it fled. It was gone. Okay, so before I start part 4, I'm really enjoying where this is going. It's very eldritch. I mean, it's cosmic horror and Lovecraftian on the title there. But I do enjoy where it's going, and before I start part 4, if you hear very autistic screeching in the background, that is my brother playing Helldivers, so I am very sorry. My door's closed. I hope he closes his door, so I hope his yelling at automatons doesn't pierce through the walls and the door and into the mic as I'm reading. But all right, let's get part 4 rolling. Let's get it rolling. The steady beep of my fire alarm persisted throughout the kitchen, even with the smoke long gone. I set my frozen body against the back door. My stare into the night sky could have stretched 1,000 miles. What should I do? Do I call the cops? A scientist? A priest? What would I even tell them? Even if I told the truth, they wouldn't believe me. Hell, I didn't believe me. The thought overwhelms me, and I could feel my body begin to shut down on me. Oh my gosh, I butchered that. And I could begin to feel my body begin to shut down on me. I looked in the kitchen, replaying the events of the night over in my head. Have I finally lost it? I grabbed the bottle of cherry vodka off the counter. There was a shot or two left remaining. Drinking wasn't going to help, but it sure as hell wasn't going to hurt either. Took a look at the damage from my fall in the dining room, which coincided with the throbbing pain in my body. I staggered across the hallway to my room and collapsed in my bed with Daisy. An involuntary wave of sleep began crashing down on me. Maybe this was a dream within a dream, and I would wake up on the couch where this nightmare began. I woke up to my face being licked, praying to God it was Daisy. Opened my eyes to find that it was indeed her. The morning light shone through on us, an unwelcome sight for sore eyes. This was worse than any hangover I ever had. This felt like a car wreck. The bruises on my leg and back served as painful reminders. Last night was very real. At least the power was back. That was a win. I realized that in my midst of the chaos, that was the last night. My phone never charged, and I mostly likely missed my alarm. As I hooked my phone to the charge, I eagerly waited to find that the time was 8:43. Jesus Christ. I missed the bus, looked at the snapshot on the table, and decided that I could still go to the hotel. Maybe he checked in with his real name, and I could mail this picture into the clinic in Summerdale. I hurried out the door, leaving my phone behind to power up. The storm last night left Paradise Point a chilly, damp wasteland. Wet leaves tumbled about the street set to an overcast sky. I hadn't even taken the time to remember that Halloween was around the corner. Despite the many vacant homes, there was a scattering of decorations on my way to the Eagle Nest. Daisy stopped to sniff some pumpkins, barked at a neighbor's scarecrow. If it didn't feel like I was already living through a horror film, I would have enjoyed the sights more, even though it was only us. Couldn't help but feel like we weren't alone. The cascading falls of excess rain into every sidewalk gutter made my palms sweat. When we arrived at the hotel to find an older woman working the front desk. She was reading an old paperback romance novel and hardly paid us any mind. Excuse me, were you working the desk overnight? Turning the page without looking up, she sighed. What does it look like? Ignoring that, I retrieved the photo from my pocket to show her. Did you happen to see this, ma'am? Refusing to pay any mind to the picture, she flatly said, No. Losing all patience, I slammed my hand on the desk, rattling her thick-rimmed glasses almost off her face. Look, lady, I've had a very long night. I need to find this man. He was supposed to check in here last night. Did you or did you not fucking see him? She was astonished, as I was. What is happening to me? No, I didn't. I'm sorry, sir, she trembled. Okay, maybe her shift started after he came in. I asked if I could see the check-in log from last night. She grabbed the clipboard and handed it over shakily. Not a single check-in. My stomach dropped. He never made it in. I could feel my pulse rising as we made our way outside. I stood out the corner with Daisy, feeling uneasy about what my next move have to be. The Eagle Nest was only on 1 block away from the beach. Bain said he'd left to say goodbye to the others. Did he go onto the boardwalk? It was a rainy night. Sometimes the homeless will sleep down there to stay dry, or even burn a bonfire to stay warm this time of year. My body was screaming internally to turn back around, but I knew where I had gone to next. I needed answers. I found my feet at the base of the boardwalk, pointed toward the unknown, swaying off the ocean into town. It was a parade of mist, a mere memory of last night's storm. If I was going to get any answers, I needed to find Bain. Best place to start would be to trace my steps. I gripped Daisy's leash tight and began my journey. The record shop was still shuttered. Mr. Doyle, the owner, would be in later today to open up shop. Business had been so quiet lately, he had let me know and he'd been in town to prepare closing down for the winter. Gazing at the shop in its current state made me long for boring nights, listening to random records. The world as I knew it felt like a distant memory. The attractions and shops that shrouded in shadow were now exposed. Somehow their presence in this light wasn't any less unsettling. Despite their catatonic state, even horses on their merry-go-round felt like they were monitoring us. There was not a soul in sight, save for one man I spotted unlocking an equipment shed. I peeked inside as I made my way. Rows of vendors, carts, and propane tanks. He must have been one of the few holdouts hanging out until the end. Soon after, I passed Vincent's. Lost in all this was the fact that I abruptly left Angie at the bar. I didn't have room in my brain at the moment to process the guilt, but with any luck, I was enough to scare her away. Whatever that was I was getting myself into, she was better off. My walk had already reached as far as I remembered seeing Bane. I looked around me. Nope, sorry, there's another one. Every shop was still under lockdown. The only landmark of note from this point was in the pier. This is the general area where I found the picture beneath me. I looked up at the town's landmark attraction, the Ferris wheel, inactive. The gale winds rocked the carriages with a foreboding groan. I could see the apprehension in Daisy's eyes. It was time to go under. Making our way down, I looked to my right. By the way I came was a repeating corridor of pillars and wood into a void. To my left was a similar sight, but ended at the concrete wall. Heading in that direction was a familiar sight in the sand. The burrowing trail I'd seen last night was still here. Even with the still present high tide swelling the sand around us, it still persisted. This trail was different. It looked like it was splintered and scattered through the ground in one direction. I knew what this looked like. I saw the same pattern on my kitchen floor last night. Looking even further around me, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just on set. There were multiple. As I followed the path to the pier wall, I noticed each passing pillar had residue of the slime that violated my home. I rushed out from under the boards and vomited into the sand. The wind was whipping now. Sand pellet bullets smacked in my face as I struggled to catch my breath. I reassured Daisy I was okay, but we both knew I was anything but. We trembled as we began to make our way to the pier. The biggest difference between the pier and the boardwalk was structure. Under the pier was much lower to the ground, and due to the numerous rides and attractions above, there were no lights shining through the cracks. Turbine winds were howling underneath, creating a similar drone to the ungodly one I heard last night. I could also see the tide was washing up below, though, as waves crashed around us. It was just then I could hear a faint growl. I looked down to see Daisy was sitting politely to my side, but her face was stern. Suddenly, she leaned forward to bark. It echoed throughout the empty space, only to be followed by more. She was pulling me toward the darkness now. I held with all my strength, but her primal instincts were stronger. Her barks became a mess of growls and spit as she showed her teeth into the abyss. Before I knew it, she yanked me into the sand as I failed to grab her. She was gone. Crouching forward, I pursued into the darkness. I followed the sounds of her barks calling her name out desperately. The only illuminating light I had at the open was the open ocean to my right, which was flooding my shoes. To my left was pure oblivion. Daisy's barks had led me deep into the bowels of our pier, when suddenly they stopped. The only noise now was my rapid breaths and the howl of wind. I called out to her only to hear nothing in response. My voice cracked as I called again. Dead silence. Tears began to befoul my eyes. Panic was flooding my body. Suddenly, a thudding. Far away, but fast approaching. I scanned my surroundings, unable to locate it. It was faster now. Each boom shook my heart. Shaking, I began to brace myself when I pummeled into the sand. I felt the same warm kisses that awoke me this morning. It was Daisy, thank God. Grabbing her ears and seeing her eyes lock onto mine, relief washed over me as the tide followed suit. My body's defense mechanism took the wheel as I began to laugh until I realized something. Daisy had dropped something foreign on my feet. It was an empty backpack, the very same empty backpack I swung over the broad shoulders of the man I was searching for. The broad shoulders. I'm sorry, not bored. A reality began creeping in on me. If I did find Bane, it's not going to be pleasant. Something was very wrong here, and we were somehow in the middle of it. But Daisy by my side, I pressed on, letting her lead the way. Sticking as close as we could to the water for light, I searched for every inch of the pier for any more clues. Just ahead were rocks that hugged the shoreline. As I focused on the waves that we were crashing into them, I saw something. It looked to be a body laid across the rocks, still under the cover of the pier. Beginning to run, we came to find something much more horrifying. What I'm about to write next, we're going to have a hard time getting through. This was a body, but it was mutilated beyond resembling anything human. Skin was almost gone, seemingly torn off the body like wrapping paper. The inner remainder on the body was covered underneath in varicose veins that were unmistakably black. The body's ribs were exposed and hollowed out like jack-o'-lanterns. Below them was a floating pool of half-devoured organs. It looked like a body that was eaten out from the inside out. The mouth was open in sheer terror, stretching wide to let out a scream that nobody would hear. The areas surrounding the mouth were stained with the jet black color I've been all too familiar with. Inside the mouth was a set of incomplete and shattered teeth, leading from the neck up towards a series of black, bloody tear trails. It led to a pair of eyes that were no longer there. The only discernible feature was the bald head that held those eyes. The head on the body was a large man who I called my friend. I stood frozen in terror, my mouth and eyes wider than the ocean beside me. Bane. Alright, before we get into part 5, I'm really wondering what the heck is under this boardwalk that mutilated Bane like that. It's pretty a visceral image. I like it a lot. It's pretty cool. Okay, on to part 5. The ticking hands of the office clock paced their way around the track. Given the fact that my phone was still at the house, this is the only concept of time I had. We sat for hours waiting for Sheriff Castle to return. His office was no more than a holding cell for us. Daisy napped on the floor as my legs bounced restlessly. Suddenly, the office door swung open, and there he was, carrying 2 bowls of water and kibble for my girl. I know you two have been waiting for some time, Mr. Gribridge. I'm sure she could use this. Placed it down to her smacking lips. Thank you. So, do you... He cut me off before I could even begin. We found your friend, or what was left of him, that is. I just returned from the coroner's office, and we have tracked down some family to come identify the body. It's an unfortunate situation. Damn shame. I'm sure that was terrible to find. Before I could even formulate a response, he continued. Looks like the coroner is leaning toward the accidental death, maybe even death by misadventure. Given where he was found and previous visits were here for drunk and disorderly, we think he might have fallen off the pier onto the rocks below. Astonished, I stood up. That's impossible! I saw him last night. He was going to Somberdale to get clean. He was sober as a stone. The sheriff raised his hand to request that I sit down. After a beat, he continued. Hold on. Yep, there it is. Man, I don't know why I burp so much. It's really a problem. Is it nervousness? Is it because I'm talking so much? I really don't know. It happens every episode. Oh, shoot, where was I? Oh, hold on. I'm sure he was. You also told me that he mentioned saying goodbye to the others. We don't have a toxicology for the report yet, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. Could have decided he wanted one last hurrah with his friends. Shaking my head, I blurted, How do you explain what happened to his body? Falling to the rocks isn't doing that. There's no way... He interrupted me again. Mac, his body was down there for hours. I've seen vultures do worse to roadkill in the street. We had a nasty storm last night that brought tides higher enough to cause flooding. It was most likely in the water for a long time. There are millions of things in those waters that could have done some damage. You would have been shocked at what washes up on the shores after a storm like that. I sat in silence. Sullen told him about what happened in my kitchen last night. Struggled with the words to explain it the entire time he was gone. Now I knew for sure he wouldn't believe me. Accidents happen, right? You of all people should understand that. There should be a wake-up call for you, Mac. I know he was your... Oh, sorry. I thought that was Mac. It's the officer. Accidents happen, right? You of all people should understand that. There should be a wake-up call for you, Mac. I know he was your friend, but that could be you someday. I stunned, stared at him. I was ashamed of what he was alluding to. I know losing your dad was hard. I knew him, hell. I tied a few off the Lee I'd mixed back in the day. I just don't want to see you go down the same path. It was awful having to respond to that call and see it was you. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to think about this, but here I was, last year, months after my dad died. I had a terrible moment. I had a few too many to mix and some more. When I went home, I couldn't stand the silence of being alone in the house another minute. I got in my car like an idiot and tried to drive back to my mom's. I was out of my mind. Ended up wrapping my car around a tree in town. Thank God nobody else was hurt. The possibility that I could have hurt someone else still eats at me. Between you and me, I still don't know if I did it on purpose or not. Sometimes I wake up out of a dead sleep thinking I'm still in the wreck. Look down to see Daisy staring up at me. I'm glad I wasn't successful. She didn't deserve that. Took a deep breath. Sheriff, I think there's something very wrong happening here. I reciprocated my inhale and crossed his hands, choosing his next words carefully, yet unsettling a serious look on his face. Mac, I'm going to give you some advice, and I strongly suggest you take it. There are things you do not understand in this world. Sometimes you have to let those things ruin their course. That's nature, son. Survival. If you can't survive, you'll soon be extinct. I think it would be in everybody's best interest if you get out of Paradise Point for a while. He grabbed his jacket with those final words and escorted us to the office. Turned around before he closed the door and asked one last question. I just need to know one thing. You contacted his family, right? What was his real name? It doesn't really matter, he said coldly. With that, he slammed the door shut. Okay, what is with this motif of no one really saying their name? It's so odd. It's like an unspoken rule of sorts. I wonder what's behind it. When we got home, the silence of this empty house forced me to confront Castle's words. I did something I never thought I'd do. Picked up my phone and called someone who had been trying to reach me for months. My mom. The sheriff was right. I am way above my head. I couldn't help but keep looking at Daisy. I can't put her or myself in any more danger. I don't know if Castle knows what I know. At this point, I didn't care anymore. The thing under the boardwalk was his problem, not mine. I had my own monster to deal with. The astonishment in my mom's voice when I called was incredible. I didn't realize how much I had alienated myself from her. I forgot how good it was to hear her voice. Are you sure, Michael? I can't be... Sorry. I just hear my brother just yelling clanker. He's fighting the automatons. Oh, man. I am so sorry. It's just really funny to hear him. Are you sure, Michael? I can be there in a few hours. It had been so long since I heard from her. I almost forgot my proper name. Almost felt like she was talking about a complete stranger. Yes, I think it's time. The haste in which she hung up the phone could be felt through the receiver. I swear I could hear her car keys rattling. I wasted no time packing up. I couldn't very well take the stereo with me, so I decided to get one last album spin. The Slider by T-Rex. Nothing like a little glam rock to lighten the mood. I think I could even sense the wag in Daisy's tail as a sign she was also ready to leave. There wasn't much I could take with me, and I wasn't sure if I was ever coming back. I'd be leaving this place almost exactly as I found it, and maybe that was for the best. Just as my favorite song of the album, Ballrooms of Mars, was playing, I couldn't help but notice an ironic line. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about the burps. There are things in the night that are better not to behold. You said a mouthful, Mr. Bolin. The sun was in its early stages of setting, and I did not want to be around for whatever tonight had to offer. Then something happened. Just as I finished packing, I went to grab a bite to eat from the fridge. The picture I drew as a kid was hanging in the front, and I took it down, weighing if I should bring it with me. The kid was certainly braver than I was now. It reminded me of what was in my pocket. I pulled out the snapshot photo of Bane and his daughter and held it side by side with my drawing. The urgency I was feeling to leave was now beginning to turn. Poor girl will never know him. He didn't even get a chance to make things right. I wished I could go back and tell him to get as far away from the boardwalk as possible when I had the chance. Then some anger started to slowly fill me. Bane wasn't just some nameless casualty to alcoholism. Letting his daughter and everybody else think that made my teeth clench. I knew what it was like to have those eyes on you when people think you know you and your family. I know what I saw, and every fiber of my being knew that sheriff was selling me out was bullshit. I couldn't go back and save Bane, but I couldn't let this be the end of him. Around this time, I could hear my mom's car pull up. I had to make a decision. I went out and greeted her with a long hug. I could practically feel her tears on my shoulders. Are you ready? She asked, misty-eyed. I could feel it in my gut. This was the part in scary movies where you're screaming at the character to get out of the house. Actually, the guys over at Max wanted to throw me a little get-together for my last night. Tommy said he'd give me a lift back to your place tomorrow afternoon. Would you mind just taking Daisy for tonight? Puzzled, she nodded yes, but didn't look convinced. Michael, are you sure? Almost as if she could tell exactly what I was going to do. I sighed. Yeah, it wouldn't feel right leaving without saying goodbye first. I'll be home sometime before noon. I smiled as I hugged her again, her face still pensive and unsure. I promise, really, I just need to do this one last thing. I gave Daisy one last kiss on her head as she settled into the front seat of the car. I will see you real soon, baby, I promise. With that, I gave my mom a wave goodbye as she drove off. I could feel a big part of my heart breaking. This might be the last time I ever see them. Daisy's eyes locked onto mine until the car was out of sight. I stared from my backyard at the tangerine-colored skies. It would be night soon. One of the perks of living here year-round was that I'm one of the only people left at my blog. With that, I was planning on doing tonight. I needed to arm myself. The McKinsey's next door had a tool shed that was almost half the size of my house. Wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I was certain it would be in there. Thankfully, they were in Florida for the winter, and they asked me to check on their place, so I knew where spare keys were. Where the spare keys were. All I knew about this thing is that fire hurt it, but didn't kill it. Maybe the key to all this was I encountered what the fateful fell took place last night. The pit in my stomach returned as I thought about it again. The nest. I started to think that maybe I was right about what I appeared to be, but not the horror of what that meant. Their shed was loaded with garden and construction equipment. Mr. McKinsey and quite the handyman and axe gleamed in the light of the shed. Might not kill it, but I'm sure it would slow it down. I stowed it away in my bag as another item caught my eye. A small handheld grill torch sat on the table with a full tank of propane attached. I'd seen Mr. McKinsey use it to show off at cookouts. A plan was starting to formulate. I returned home to pack my bags for the night. This time there was no music. I was going to have to make a stop at Mick's after Tommy closed down for the night. Looked at my phone to see a text. My mom had sent me a picture of her and Daisy, safe and sound. I could feel a tear in my eye as I texted her, "I love you." Scrolled to the very bottom of my messages to see that last line. The last conversation I had with my dad. Me. I'll be there in a few hours. Want some takeout? My treat. Dad, it doesn't really matter. It was just then I heard a sudden knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anybody and certainly didn't want any company at this moment. And the knocking continued. Tried to peek out of around the door to get a glimpse. It was nightfall now and I couldn't make out the shape of whoever or whatever it was out. Finally, I swung the door open to see a shocking sight. Angie? Angie, what are you doing here? She asked us as if she could come in and I obliged. She took a second to think over her words and turned around. Tommy gave me your address. Something seemed really off last night when you were leaving. I just wanted to check up on you. I felt like I needed to make up any lie. I could get her out of here, but I couldn't help but feel disarmed by her presence. I'm okay. That album I was telling you about, it fell out of my bag, and I went to go back to get it before that storm hit, I explained. That's not what I'm talking about, she replied. You just seemed like you were struggling with something. I could see it in your eyes the entire time. Tommy told me about your dad after you left. I shook my head. Of course he did. I'm fine. I promise, I said, laughing. I don't know who I was trying to convince. She asked if we could sit down on the couch, and I followed her. She seemed very sullen, not the same lively girl I'd met last night. The bright eyes I got acquainted with now had a cloudier tone. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. I just wanted to tell you that you aren't alone, even if you feel like you are. I know what it's like to lose somebody, and I still deal with it every single day. Wringing her hands, she continued, I lost my little sister 5 years ago. Told her how sorry I was. She took it off and took a look around the house. She shook it off and took a look around the house. This is a pretty big place just for one guy, don't you think? Yeah, this used to be my grandmother's. She left it to me and my dad, and he moved down here after with the divorce. When he passed, oh my gosh, that voice crack. Let me restart that. Yeah, me and my dad. Let me restart that. Yeah, this used to be my grandmother's. She left it to me and my dad, and he moved down here after the divorce. When he passed, it went to my mom and I. That would explain the antique furniture, she jabbed jokingly, looking at an old wood cabinet of pictures. I laughed. I think it adds to the charm, don't you? She nodded and continued to scan the living room when the record player caught her eye. She got up to check it out when she noticed the collection of albums. So, are you going to play the record that was more important than hanging out with me last night? She inquired sarcastically. I got up to find it. Looking at the cover made me freeze in place. I was getting distracted from what I needed to do tonight. I glanced over to my bag to make sure it was in plain sight. I could have Angie questioning what I was doing with the axe. Decided that it was still too early for Mix to have been closed. Couldn't act suspicious and chance Angie finding out what I was up to. My best bet was to play it cool and send her on her way. Place the needle on side 2 here. Oh my gosh. I am butchering this. I am so sorry. I got a burp. Hold on, I can feel it. Oh, man. I'm good. Okay. I placed the needle on side 2 where I left off and returned to the couch. We listened for a while and she remarked that I had good taste. I thanked her and said I get it from my dad. What was he like? She asked. I took a deep breath. No, there's another one. Excuse me. He was great. He was my best friend, my only friend, for a while. It was like we were the same person. She smiled and encouraged me to go on. We did everything together. We were inseparable. He used to always say for the moment I was born, everything just clicked. It was effortless, you know? I never tried too hard at all. I never tried too hard. It all just came naturally. We bonded over everything. He was like a superhero to me. I started to get a little choked up. I hadn't talked about my dad like this since the funeral. Maybe it was the weight of the world that I'd been feeling crash down on me. Maybe there was something about Angie I instinctively trusted. It all just poured out into me. It all just poured out of me at that moment. When my parents got divorced, things really changed. It didn't happen overnight, but he was never the same. He stopped being my dad. When he moved down here, this drinking started, and it wasn't long before he was unrecognizable. I think the pain of losing my mom was just too much for him. His drinking pushed me away, and I stopped coming to see him as much. I stopped to catch my breath. I was speaking so fast, I forgot to breathe. I slowed myself down and regained my composure. I came down during winter break from school to spend Christmas with him. When I came in, he was passed out on the recliner, listening to music. I should have known something was wrong. Daisy was whining the moment I walked in the door. I stopped the music and went to cover him with a blanket when I noticed he wasn't snoring like he usually does. He wasn't breathing at all. I couldn't go on. I stared at the chair and found for a moment it was like he was still there. Nothing about this room had changed since that night. I've been reliving that every single day without realizing it, like I never left. They said it was alcohol poisoning, but it felt like my dad died long before that. I lamented. Angie brought me in for a hug. I could feel tears squeezing out of my eyes. It's okay, she whispered. Holding her in my arms, she stared off and broke through the sound of music. Ruby was my whole world. She was such a ray of sunshine. It was impossible to feel sad around her. She wanted me to take her sledding after the blizzard we got about 5 years ago. We had so much fun. It was just the two of us. I felt like a kid again. She got quiet, almost as if she was living through it again right there in my arms. Last thing I remember was her singing in the car with me. And then walking up into the hospital, we hit a patch of black ice on the drive home. I lost control and we hit a tree head on. My heart was thudding like thunder, almost breaking completely. Said she died on impact, like it was some kind of a comfort that she didn't suffer. As much as I have tried to cope and heal, wish every day that we could trade places. Then she said something that shook me my very being. Some nights I wake up and it's like I'm still in a wreck. Time may pass, but it doesn't mean it takes you with it. That thing about depression, it's like quicksand. You're stuck in a place, slowly being consumed and don't even know it. That's what it wants. It's inside of us all, biding its time before it can swallow us whole. We sat in silence. Those words hit me hard. Then a question dawned on her and she got up to look at me. You said you had a dog. Where is she? I was so deep in this moment I had almost forgotten Daisy was with my mom. I made a promise to her that I would be back. Maybe it wasn't too late to turn around. Oh, I actually had my mom pick her up. I think I'm going to leave Paradise Point for a while. I just needed some time before I left, I confessed. I just needed to do something before I left, I confessed. She looked puzzled. Really? What was that? There was no way I could tell her the truth. I was at a crossroads, but I knew what I needed to do. For now, I didn't see the harm in spending what could be my last hours with her. Maybe I needed to see that girl who worked with the counter at Benson's before I left, I quipped. I felt something pulling me down. It was her. She brought me in for a kiss. A kiss that felt like the very first warm day after months of winter. That's so sweet. What is it's so cheesy. What record was your dad listening to? She asked, nodding toward the stereo cabinet. I had to think about it. It was Band on the Run by Wings. Paul was always his favorite Beatle. As a matter of fact, this was the very room where my grandmother and father watched the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. My dad always said that was a moment that changed his life forever. Ironically, the song was playing was the second to last Picasso's last words. It always stuck with me. It's a shame he didn't at least make it to the end. What did you say we finished it for him? She suggested. It made me smile. We were nearing the end of the secret treaties, and she asked if she could use the bathroom. Pointed her in the right direction, and she decided to find the album. Once I found it, I heard her voice in the distance. Mac, I think something's wrong with your sink. Confused, I asked, what do you mean? She replied, there's nothing coming out. It keeps shaking when I turn the faucet. I think it's clogged. Midway across the living room, I started to get the pit in my stomach again. Don't touch anything, Angie. I'll be right there, I commanded. Mac, can you? Her voice started to tremble as she began to rush to the door. Swung the door open to see her staring at the mirror. Her hands were crooked and frozen, her eyes wide and fixed upon them. Her fingers were darkly stained and shaking. She began to turn to me, pleading for help. The color sent a jolt of terror through my body. Black. Just as she was about to say something, she gasped suddenly, and the stains absorbed into her skin like a sponge. She shook violently, and her wide eyes locked onto mine, looking for answers. It was then she began to cough. It was quiet, but then began to gag. She collapsed through the tiles, gasping for air as I reached down to catch her. Just before my eyes, one of her teeth fell onto my lap. Oh, gosh. Then another. Cries began to ring out through the room as she desperately grabbed for them. A darkness began to bleed through the vacant gums in her mouth, smearing her face. I released her and stood frozen as I watched her crawl towards the toilet. She looked back at me, and her eyes began to ooze the same substance through the tear ducts. Her whimpers were now screams as she watched her eyes begin to roll back into her head. The white now consumed with black, they bulged as they melted from the inside of her head, painting her face as she clawed it. Good lord, man! I fell back into the door and slowly began to crawl back as I watched her body convulse. Her veins began to pulsate. I could practically see them through her skin as the darkness invaded the bloodstream. Her fingernails slid off, making way for the same stringy mess of black tendons I saw last night. Soon, they broke through several areas of her body, ripping her skin apart. Suddenly, her screaming stopped. A new noise came from her mouth, and it didn't belong to her. Her limp head slowly twisted towards me as her body began to slowly stagger upwards. Skidded across the floor and slammed the door shut. I ran across the living room to hide behind the couch, grabbed the axe and grill torch. I needed something flammable. It was dead silent when the sudden start of the final song, Astronomy, made me jump. I could hear the quiet turning of my bathroom knob creak throughout the house. I peeked my head above to see the only light in the bathroom against the wall, an unholy silhouette that occupied it. I watched those black webs stick to the hardwood floor, dragging Angie's lifeless feet forward. She was unrecognizable, practically being worn as a suit. The same dissonant sound droned from within her as it crept its way through the shadows of my hallway. It made its way to the light switch, turning it to the exact location as if it knew where I was. It widened Angie's decimated mouth into a twisted form of a smile as it killed the lights. Turned back down behind the couch, trying to quiet my rapid breath. My heart was beating faster than the crescendoing music beside me. I grabbed my axe and waited. I needed to buy time and slow it down. I leaned in and focused on the sound that was buzzing from her body as it drew closer. My adrenaline was at an all-time high as I could hear the wet suction on the floor beside me. I jumped out from behind the couch to meet the atrocity, screaming as I swung my axe. The element of surprise was on my side. I took wild swings at the thighs like a demented lumberjack. The leg separated from what I used to be a body as it collapsed to the floor. I took my chance and ran like hell with the torch and axe. I made it to the bathroom to find a large can of Lysol spray in the cabinet. Looked around the corner to see the thing had sprouted more black tendrils from where I amputated the leg. It stood tall, staring down its prey. Let it screech through Angie's mouth as I sprinted down the hallway. Opened the basement door deliberately and then quietly hid in the adjacent closet down the hall, leaving only a crack. Just then, the music began to warp into a crawling halt. I could almost hear its appendages sticking to the vinyl. Now the only sound that filled the house was the creaks of hardwood floor, accompanied by the thick thuds of Angie's body being dragged down the hallway. I quieted my breathing and waited. My hands were shaking on the axe as the thing drew nearer. Just as it finally made it to the basement opening, I sprung from the closet and buried the axe into its head, practically splitting it down the middle. Black blood began to drip down its face as it turned to roar at me with such ferocity that I flew back into the closet. I scrambled to grab the spray and torch as a fireball exploded from my hands, engulfing the body in flames with both feet. I kicked as hard as I could, sending it tumbling down the basement stairs. Slammed the door shut and held my body against it. All I could hear was the muffled cries of the beast and the crackling flames. There was no way out down there, no windows or vents, only this door. I needed to barricade it. I ran to the living room and pushed the antique wooden cabinet out of my family photo onto the floor, shattering years of memories in the process. I pushed with all my might, as fast as I could, propping it against the door and handle. Held my body weight against it, and the muffled screeches began to rip through the walls as I held my ears. I could hear the slight thud of something climbing up the stairs on one step at a time. I armed myself again. I wouldn't stop until this thing was ash. Just as I was at my most tense, I could hear the crash of the burnt carcass hit the basement floor. It was quiet now. I wasn't taking any chances. I hurriedly grabbed every piece of furniture I could and stacked it against the door. I collapsed onto the floor, out of breath. I knew this wasn't the end. Okay, part 7 finale. This is really interesting. Oh, that's so brutal. I thought it was a sweet little romantic moment. Now we're just gonna kill her like that. She's gonna become part of the entity of whatever this thing is. It's like some kind of weird, demented symbiote. It's kind of sick. I heard as I grabbed my bag. The axe was in the basement with Angie's body, and I couldn't chance going down there. I was met with a brisk and hollowed wind outside as I began to rush down the street. My phone's clock read just past midnight. Tommy usually gave last call at 11 or so. Mix was attached to a motel owned by the same family. He was most likely working the desk overnight, so I needed to be careful. I ran in the corner and crept in the shadows of the building to see Tommy at the desk typing away on a laptop. He always said he was going to write a book about this place. I made my way down the alley where we threw the trash out. The back door to the kitchen had an electric padlock since keys kept going missing. I punched the combo in from the memory and quietly made my way in. Thankfully, Tommy kept the jukebox on. He didn't like how quiet things got overnight, and he enjoyed hearing the music from the front desk. He always joked it was for the ghost, and I started to think maybe he wasn't kidding. All I could hear was some indistinct song by the Carpenters, echoing throughout, and that certainly wasn't his taste. The kitchen was dark, so I had to use my phone flashlight as I searched for a bag of bar rags. Once I found them and stuffed a few into my bag, I peered out into the desolate bar. The room was only lit by the still-playing jukebox. Behind the bar was an aluminum bat. Tommy insisted on keeping it there in case of an emergency, but tonight it belonged with me. Excuse me. I grabbed the liquor room keys hanging above the register and quietly snuck my way into the back room. I searched for any spirits higher than 100 proof, but we only had one. In very back sat a single bottle of Everclear. It wasn't ideal, but I wouldn't have to make it count. I kept looking out every few seconds to make sure I didn't alert Tommy. Spent many nights closing alone here, and you never felt like you were the only one in the room. Took one last look at the bar before I left. The jukebox began to cut out and its lights flickering. A new song began. It was a familiar one. It was the final song of the album my dad never finished, 1985. All those nights I spent here alone. Maybe there was somebody sitting in that empty seat after all. Stood at the mouth of the boardwalk, gazing into the void that laid ahead. The only light was provided by the full moon, which shone through the cracks above. I retrieved the heavy-duty leather gloves and stole from the McKinsey's shed and gripped the baseball bat tight. The Lysol spray and torch were positioned in the outer pockets of the bag at my back like gun holsters. Traversed the sand floor, waving all my light down the hall of pillars. I could hear the boardwalk moaning above me as if it were gasping its final breaths. I needed to find the nest and put it into this. These patterns on the ground below me would lead me right to it. I was certain of nothing else. I was just what I wanted, and I was ready for it to come get me. Just as I was making my way to the pier, suddenly there was a noise. It echoed from behind me as I shone my light in its direction. All I could see was the concrete structure standing still as a tomb, but one had something dark wrapping around it. From the shadows, a figure emerged, bathed in the moonlight was a nightmarish sight. Angie, or what used to be Angie. She was in a charred state of complete decay from what I could see, practically falling apart with each step. Turned to hide behind the pillar next to me, stowing the baseball bat away and aiming myself with the makeshift flamethrower. Arming myself. My breaths were sharp and uncontrollable as I could feel its presence. I peeked around the corner to see the next to move. Her body stopped moving and began to convulse. The black tendrils that had been using her body began to evacuate her into the sand, leaving her a hollowed husk on the ground. Aimed my weapon at the sand as a furious burrow began to form. Just as it reached me and my heart was set to explode, it rushed right by me. I stared out to where it went and could see where it was leading. The pier. I began to run after it, following the fleshly made path. I ducked under the low-hanging ceiling and scanned the area. There was nothing now, just undisturbed sand. Just undisturbed sand. Where did it go? I began to search wildly around me. Sounds I hadn't heard before began to ring out the cavern. As I searched, I suddenly couldn't move. Tripped and fell, losing my torch in the sand in front. I grabbed my phone from the pocket and shone my flashlight into my feet to find they were covered in a clear slime that blended into the sand. They were puddles of all around me. This was a trap, like a fly in a spider's web. I was stuck. I could feel my legs slowly giving away to the sand, my hands dragging along in the soft ground. It was then I heard yet another sound, a wet squelch. It desperately flashed my light around the pier to find its source. At the very end of the pier, painted into the corner, was a mass. This was a fleshy sack that sprawled out along the ceiling, taking up more than a quarter of the size of the boards above it. I swung my back off and in front, reached for the bat for leverage. I kicked my legs and momentarily stopped my descent, stabbing the handle of the bat into the dry sand ahead until it was firm. I pulled my feet slightly forward, looked up to the mass to see something that made my blood run cold. 100 dark craters, wide and deep. They were pulsating with malice. Then it happened. They blinked at me. This is kind of giving me vibes of The Thing. Like, it's just something, like, old and unknown that you, just shouldn't mess with or toy with. First, I began pulling my legs up, finally freeing them from the sand. My shoes were hardening like concrete. Scrambled to take them off and grab my torch when I heard a loud boom. Flashed my light to the ceiling to see the nest was gone. The horrible noise was back. The sour buzzing that had been violating my ears in the near distance. Something began to rise. Endless black arms began to reach the ceiling in columns, sprawling out into the sand. At this epicenter was the nest, triple the size of when I saw it. It was stretched out wide, with each of its holes spitting out more dark tendrils. A scream began to crescendo inside it as it killed the light and grabbed my torch from the sand. Swung my bag over my shoulder and ran toward the ocean, feeling like the ground below me quake. I could look back to see it was gone. My bare feet sprinted, only to be halted by a black arm that exploded from the sand in front of me, plastered to the boards above me, and as another did the same a few yards away, I zigzagged between them as I neared the exit. A maze began to form. As they got ever closer to my catching me, just as I made it to the clearing, I threw my bag over the top and climbed the bed of rocks barefoot. A flooding of dark, stringy webs began to consume the rock towards me. I used the last of the Lysol to spray, created a trail of flames in my torch. The burnt mess retreated back into the abyss. I could feel the rage permeating from the earth below me as it roared, leaping as high as it could. I climbed on top of the guard's rail to safety. Backing from the clearing, armed with my bat, my eyes frantically searched for any signs of the monster. Silence filled the space around me, only interruption by the sounds of my bare feet backing away. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't slow my heart right down as my hands trembled on the bat. Spotting my next destination, my blistering feet quietly crept towards the shed near the Ferris wheel. The bottom of my bat swung furiously at the lock, every whack making my heart skip a beat. I scanned the labyrinth of rides and games, no sign of it in sight. The padlock fell to the board, but suddenly my feet felt a wave of hot, thick air. My body froze. I peered down to see every crack of the boardwalk below my feet filled with blinking craters. A number of black appendages broke through the cracks to block me. The bat swung with purpose as it collided with my arms, sparring them across the wall of the shed. My bat stuck to them as I fell lifeless to the ground. Clearing formed and it took off around the corner of the shed as the monster squealed in pain. As I retreated below, I ran to the circuit box across the pier. Head behind it, the monstrosity lifted itself up through the hole it created. Crawling like an arachnid, I hunted for my scent as I threw one of the switches above me. The water gun game lit up. Its blaring music jarred the creature. I needed it to move further away so I can flip another. The horse carousel at the entrance came to life, its motion eliciting an attacking response. I made my way to the shed as fast as I could, retrieving my bag as I frantically ran inside, twisting every knob possible open. This, the propane created a high-pitched symphony only to be overpowered by the frustrated bellowing of the beast. I was out of time. I could hear the thunderous thuds in the near distance making their way back. I took my phone out and set a timer for 3 minutes and set it on the floor. Peeked out to see it wasn't yet back. Making my move, my feet swiftly rounded the corner, my body painted to the wall as I inched my way across. By the time I made it back, I could see the behemoth was on the prowl. I leaned down as it came closer, retrieving the contents of my bag quietly. Contents. I doused a bar rag with a bottle of grain alcohol as I stuffed it inside, kept counting in my head, which just had passed 2 minutes. Just as I was finishing, the bottle slipped from my hands. The monster shot a look into my direction, crouching as it webbed arms and legs drug across the floor. Turning away, I kept counting. The ungodly hum was drawing closer, vibrating the ground below me as tears began to well in my eyes. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Biting my lip, closing my eyes, holding my breath, the bottle and torch ready in each hand. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The alarm buzzed out and I could hear the crashing bangs of the monster attacking the sound. Running faster than I ever had before in my life, I ran out in front and turned to face my demon. I lit the wick of my bomb as the creature frantically turned to see that its prey had the upper hand. It shrieked and wailed as I threw it with all my might and darted across the pier, getting as close as I could to the clearing. I could feel the wind of the explosion at my back as it detonated, sending a sonic boom throughout a paradise point. My feet lifted off the ground as I flew forward, rolled to the edge of the pier as my body fell free to the rocks below. Once I came to, the visage of our town's Ferris wheel in flames greeted my eyes. My body ached with resonating pains. I dragged myself up to begin making my way home. I limped as fast as I could and kept to the shadows below the boardwalk until I reached my next destination. Tommy was outside Mick's, smoking a cigarette as he gazed astonished at the burning wheel in the sky. I stuck into the motel office and stole his laptop. You have to forgive me later. Sirens began to ring out around me as I kept to backyards and alleyways before I finally made it home. Staggered across the front door, hardly astonished at the wreckage of his house. I reached into the freezer for a bottle of blackberry brandy. Somehow I managed to get through the night sober. But that was all about to change. I looked down at the hall and see the destruction of my basement door, and the furniture I used to barricade it to look like the attic was the only option I had. Each step up the ladder was a painful labor as I made my way. I took heavy boxes of old toys and clothing to block the entrance. Thankfully, Tommy kept his laptop charged at all times. This is going to be a lot. I've been up here for hours. At least I'm spending this time surrounded by the memories that I've been collecting dust. I can still hear my myriad of sirens wailing in the distance. A small vent up here is giving me a glimpse of the birth of a new sun rising. The dawning sky is being clouded by the smoke rolling off the Ferris wheel. I was rarely ever awake to see the sunrise around here. They are truly beautiful. I did what I had to do, and now you know the terrible truth. I don't even know if I was successful. I do know I did what I thought was right. I'd hate to hurt the flow of the revenue of the town more than I already have, but I strongly suggest visiting elsewhere next summer. Mom. If I had just accepted your love and help, I wouldn't be in this mess. I wasn't the only person who lost someone. My pain wasn't more important than yours. I was selfish. I was angry. I needed someone to blame, and I took it out on you. None of this is your fault, and I'm sorry. I love you. To Angie's parents. As unbelievable as the story is, I promise you until my dying breath it's the truth. Your daughter had the misfortune of crossing my path, and I'm sorry. I would give you anything to trade places and give her back to you. To Paradise Point. To Paradise Point. I would imagine I'm not welcome back. As much as it pains me to have set fire to an effigy of anybody's memory, I promise you there are worse things in this life. You can choose to believe me. You can twist the story into this paranoid delusion of a local drunk. I don't really care. Whatever you choose to do, I implore you it be this. Don't go under the boardwalk. Well, now would be a good time as any for a drink. Probably going to be my last for a long time. Might be for the best, right? Here's to you. If you made it this far, maybe you believe me. Here's to the monster trying to eat us all from the inside out. God, I'm gagging. Why the hell was this warm? Pulled it out from the freezer, didn't I? This isn't brandy. I can't stop coughing. There's something on the floor. Is that a tooth? Wow, that's a pretty sick story. I really like that. Monster got him in the end. I probably left some kind of piece behind and kind of snuck its way into the brandy or, the alcohol. And it got him. That's a pretty good story. I really like that a lot. The descriptions of the monster were cool. Killing off characters like Angie was pretty, is a pretty bold was going to stick with him and they were going to live happily in a love story. No, that ain't it. She didn't live happily, and he definitely is not going to live happily. But like I said, I really did like that a lot. So thank you again for, letting me read your story, and I hope you see the video. And I want to know what you all thought of the story. Did you like it? Did you not? Just leave it a comment below. So, and that's honestly all I have. So, like I said, all the links in the description will be below. All the links in the description will be below for you to check out the author in the Discord I have. So, thanks again, guys, for watching. I appreciate it. Y'all have a lovely night. Later.